Freedom, wealth, and three northern tales. Why someone else's paradise just can't be copied. Let's imagine a country where a doctor, a nurse, a bricklayer, and a cashier give almost half of everything they earn to the state. Well, they're not millionaires, just regular people, and yet they don't rebel, don't run away, and don't hide their income. On the contrary, they're proud of it and believe they live in the best country in the world. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is not fiction, it's Denmark. Now, here's the second picture. In Europe, which, so to speak, is where Denmark is located, there are 560 million people. In the United States, there are 350 million. Well, that's about 200 million less, let's say. Yes. And almost everything that has changed your life in the last 30 years, smartphones, search engines, social networks, artificial intelligence, rockets that land back on the platform, was born not where there are more people, but where there are fewer people. Although the people, yes, seem to be the same. Two mysteries. Happy Denmark, giving away half and satisfied. And little America, little, with 200 million fewer people than Europe, yet surpassing big Europe. At first glance, they seem to be about different things, but they have the same answer. And today I will give it to you. This answer will explain why some societies become wealthy, while others, despite all their resources and people, quiet, what is called stagnation. Quiet. And it turns upside down what is usually said about the left and the right, by the way. If you enjoy analyses where we dig into how things work instead of just repeating headlines, subscribe to the Roadmap to Freedom, hit the bell and leave a like. And for those who want to go deeper, I have a private tier for $4 a month with early access. Well, now to the point. First, where does wealth even come from in the first place? Well, look, they say that America has built more, that America has produced more wealth in its 200 years of existence than the rest of the world combined. The rest of the world in all 6,000 years of its known existence. So what is this? Where does it come from? Let's get down to the very foundation. What is wealth? It's not just a pile of money. Money is just, well, paper, yes, IOUs. Wealth is the things and services that make life better. Food, houses, medicine, cars, communication, knowledge. And all of this has to be created by someone. These are products that don't grow on trees. They have to be made. According to the great distinction made by Franz Oppenheimer, a person has only two ways to get something. The first way he called economic. Well, I would call it the productive way, to produce it yourself or to exchange it honestly. The second way, well, you can get it as a gift from your parents, like for your birthday or something else. The second way is political. To take it away from the one who produced it, either by force or by law. Yes, remember this distinction. It actually explains everything today. The difference is not between law and force. They are the same thing. A law is not really a law if it isn't backed by force. Yes, so it's either by force or by the threat of force. All real wealth of humanity has been created only by the first method, that is, by production. The second method, meaning, well, taking away, yes, doesn't create anything, it just redistributes. So it doesn't create. Things are already created and then they're just taken from one pocket and put into another, losing something along the way. Naturally, and that's the main question. Under what condition does a person take on producing, inventing, and building? The answer is actually simple and, as libertarians would say, relentless. Then and only then when he is free to do so and confident that the fruits of what he does will belong to him. Because it is still completely impossible. This is a question for 90% of societies on the planet. Freedom is not a luxury and not a slogan. Freedom is the fuel that drives the creation of wealth. Take it away and the engine stalls. Freedom to do what you want. Well, okay, if you're forced, you still do it. It's worse, but you do it, right? But if you get nothing out of it, well, you do it really badly, right? Now there's one myth worth dispelling. It's commonly believed that breakthroughs are made by geniuses. So where are there more smart people? The more discoveries there are, but the evidence against that is right in front of you. Europe gave the world Einstein, Bauer, Curie, Turing, brains that are no worse than American ones, right? And yet greatness is created across the ocean. In the last 100 years, for example, right? It's created across the ocean. Greatness is created where there are fewer people. It seems like the brains there might even be worse, or maybe the same, who knows? So it's not about quantity, and not about the quality of brains. Genius without freedom. That's just a smart person who hasn't done anything. But an ordinary person with the freedom to act can move mountains. That's something you can actually see, as they say. You can see it from experience. How exactly does freedom, you might ask, turn into technology? Let me explain. It's not magic. It's a scientific concrete mechanism made up of 4 parts. There are 4 clear steps in it. You know, in order to live, you need to have air. To breathe, right? You need to have water, right? You need to have food and, well, who knows? Maybe you need something else too, right? I can't even think of what else right now. So here, in the same way, in order for things to become technologically better, you need a few things. The first is the right to try without permission. It might not sound like much, but the point is, gentlemen, to be able to try without permission. Let me explain. New things are always born in areas that the law hasn't described yet. Because the new, well, it just isn't in the rules yet. It's not in the rules, so, yeah. Only when something exists do we describe it. This is where the principle, do what is not forbidden, applies. So where this principle works, that's where the inventor tries things. Where it's not allowed, until they give permission, he waits for years for approval. The idea dies. Or he leaves. America, by default, says yes, go ahead and try. Most of the world, by default, says ask first. That's one. Second, money is ready to be burned. What does it mean, money is ready to be burned? Nobody likes it. But a new risky idea needs special capital, the kind that's ready to lose everything for a chance at a huge return. And where is there a lot of that kind of capital? Where people are bold. People. Well, they get fired up with enthusiasm, creative people. They fund the idea, even if 9 out of 10 projects fail, because the 10th one will pay for everything. Where the capital is only cautious, that's banking capital, the kind that demands guarantees. No one will fund a risky idea. But can you imagine if 2 or even 3 out of 10 succeed? Whoa! Third, you have to have the right to fail. And here's an unexpected twist. We're used to thinking that wealth creates success. In reality, the foundation of wealth is the freedom to fail. Let me try to explain. Where bankruptcy is a lifelong stigma, a person won't take risks. And by the way, I remember this from Russia, from Ukraine, and from Europe. Trump had 6 bankruptcies. Yeah. Well, it doesn't matter. Out of the 1,900 businesses that were created with his help, there were 6 bankruptcies. Amazing. Amazing. Well, it doesn't matter. They feel like it's terrible, like it's a stigma. But for us, well, the person tried, right? Nothing is guaranteed anywhere. Well, he tried, but it didn't work out. He moved on. Where is failure considered a normal part of life? That's in the USA. Well, yeah, it didn't work out. But I tried. But it didn't work. I'll try again. This goes back to Edison, right back then. You know, we already tried 16,523 materials there, and it also didn't work either. It doesn't work like the tungsten filament. Same thing, right? They didn't know it was tungsten. They were looking for it. And Edison says, very well. So this doesn't work either. Let's make sure to write this down. This is the right to fail. Here, people are constantly taking risks. Someone ends up changing the world. For a society to become wealthy, it must first allow its people to go bankrupt. The country forbids it. By forbidding failure, by condemning failure, it also forbids success. These are 2 sides of the same coin. As soon as you forbid failure, you stop success. You stop movement. And that means you stop success. And the 4th thing, so now I'm going to be accused of capitalism, that very thing. Well, like shark, right? What kind of capitalism is that? Shark. Of course, capitalist shark. And capital is something else. Capitalist, yes. Spider, I think. The right to keep the fruits for yourself. That is, well, as Vladimir Vladimirovich said, in that very place, in the Leningrad City Hall, money. Why work yourself to the bone and lose sleep at night if the result will be taken away by taxes or regulations? The more a person is allowed to keep, the more they create. The incentive to create is based on the confidence that what you create is yours. Put together the 4 parts: permissions, permission to try, money for taking risks, forgiven failure, and here is the right to the fruits of your labor. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is the formula for how freedom turns technology into wealth. And from here comes the answer to the most striking question. Why does the same person on different sides, as they say, across the big pond, produce different results? A European comes to America and suddenly builds, invents, takes risks. Not because he got smarter on the plane, but because he ended up in an environment where his risk is financed, failure is forgiven, the market is huge, and ambition is respected. An American moves to a highly regulated country and quiets down. It's the same person. The only thing that changes is what society allows him to do. That's when he either flourishes or withers. And now, just a couple of words about how rules eat away at the future. It probably sounds a bit strange. Eat away at the future, right? Yes, they consume or devour it. I can't say it more clearly. Trust me, that's true. I'm not against rules, or rather, not against certain rules like don't kill, don't steal, keep your agreements. Yes, basically things that are written in the Ten Commandments. Yes. That's what safeguards freedom. Without them, there'd be no creation. And these rules protect a person from someone else's violence, from that very political way of taking something away from you. But there is another kind of rules. The ones that prohibit you from acting in advance until you prove to an official that you have the right. Licenses for everything, all the endless approvals, regulations, each one by itself seems reasonable. Well, kind of reasonable. It's always introduced for a good cause, but here's what you don't see. Every restriction has an invisible cost. Everyone sees what the rule prohibits, but almost no one sees what it has killed. A company that was never born, a medicine that never reached the patient, an invention that either disappeared completely or left the country. Visible benefit versus invisible loss. And since the loss is invisible, society keeps adding one more rule again and again. But it's the right thing to do to add it, isn't it? And then another one. And they end up shackling the very ability to create something new. A country that has burdened itself with restrictions doesn't collapse overnight. No. As the Arabs say, shwaya, slowly. It just stops inventing. First, the most ambitious people leave. Then, new industries are born elsewhere. Then you have to buy from others what you could have created yourself. Look, our guy went to America, and look how successful he became. Oh, we have such smart people. Of course, they're smart, but the smartest ones leave. Wealth lasts for a while due to inertia, because of what's been accumulated. Yes, as Margaret Thatcher said, she said that socialism works perfectly well until the money runs out, the money they, so to speak, stole from capitalism. Or maybe she said it differently, but the point is the same. Yes, society starts to consume its reserves. So when I was trying to explain what it was about, it's like a family that lives off its savings after it stops earning money. That's the answer to the first riddle. Europe is richer in people, its culture is older. It's not lacking in intelligence, not at all. But over the decades, it has surrounded itself with caution. Capital is timid, failure is punished, the market is fragmented into dozens of countries and regulators, each with their own. And every new phenomenon is met with the question, how can we ban this, not how can we allow it? 350 million on a single free field create more than 550 on a fragmented and over-regulated one. It's not about the languages. If you need a good heater there, people who speak English, French, and I would say Belgian, but Belgians also speak French, will buy it. But wait, what about happy Denmark? We were told about Denmark. So at this point, an honest person has to stop and ask, is there freedom and low restrictions? Is that all that's needed then? Why Denmark, though? Where do they take it? Half of it. It's wealthy, peaceful, and according to all surveys, people are satisfied. Doesn't that contradict everything I just said? No. If you look at it from afar, if you don't get too close, then yes, everything is absolutely correct. But if you look closer, Denmark doesn't contradict, it actually confirms it. It confirms my words. But to see this, let's look at 3 northern fairy tales that we usually use as examples. We'll see that each one has its own secret, and not just one. They can't be copied. Otherwise, everyone would have copied them a long time ago, right? If it's so good, why not copy it? All right, let's go. First, Norway. Norway has such an amazing life. It's constantly put on the same level as Denmark. But there's a fact that changes the whole picture. The good life in Norway isn't paid for by hard work. How, you might ask? Like this. They have oil gushing out just like the Arabs. Oil and gas provide about a third of the state's income, almost half of exports, and nearly a fifth of the economy. That means oil revenues are about 4% of GDP, compared to 0.2% on average in developed countries. That's a 20-fold difference. The largest sovereign wealth fund in the world, was extracted from the bottom of the North Sea. That's not an achievement. They didn't make it. They didn't invent it. They didn't create it. They just sat on it. So when their ancestors settled there, it was already there.
Это
You can call it luck, or you can see it differently. Personally, I don't think it's luck, but they think it's luck. You can't just say, in another country, work like the Norwegians. More accurately, go find oil worth 4% of your GDP, then we'll talk. That's rent, not a model. And when production starts to decline in the 30s, the source will begin to shrink. Wealth that isn't counted, that's what it means to shrink. Wealth that is based on, well, right now it's good, because there's something to extract and somewhere to extract it from, right? But after that, most likely things will get bad. Well, besides that, you can't just take it and move it to Canada, for example, right? Switzerland is wealthy, even though Canada has oil, right? It's wealthy, safe, the services are excellent, but how? The Swiss collect a lot of money and return it to themselves in the form of excellent roads, healthcare, schools, order, and they have no intention of sharing it with any outsiders. Basically, it's a closed club of people who trust each other, pool their money together, and make sure that only their own take from it. By the way, well, it's like a family, right? Let's say we lied, we live in a house, there are about 15 or 20 of us, and we all put money into a common fund so that, for example, we can save ourselves from a fire, or if we need a doctor to come or something else. It's a normal approach, right? We, so to speak, chip in and, as they say, pay for ourselves, not for someone else, not for some stranger, but for ourselves. That's why it's almost impossible for a foreigner to get in there. Citizenship is one of the longest processes in the world, and the final decision is often made by the neighbors in the community themselves, literally by voting. Are you worth it? He lived next to us for a while, and we think he throws trash on the street and smokes at home by the window. He's not worthy, and you won't get citizenship, even if you're a Nobel laureate. This isn't random bureaucracy, it's a deliberate protection of the community, the common pot. They have a common fund. A system of high trust and high return only works as long as you strictly control who gets in, and their fortress is deliberately locked. Try transplanting that to the US. As they used to say when I was a kid, you'll get nothing. I don't know why. That's it. And finally, Denmark, which is where we kind of started, right? Its model rests on 3 pillars. And the main thing is not taxes on the rich, but total taxation of the ordinary person. So basically, everything is fair, right? The income tax rate is high, income tax starts early, and it's paid by the average worker. Plus, there's a 25% sales tax on almost everything. So not only do you pay about half of what you earn to someone else, but when you go to buy something, they take another 25% from you. So basically, if you add half and then another 25% from the remaining half, that's 12.5, so they take almost 62.5% from you before you even get a chance to breathe. That same nurse pays for her free health care twice. In return, she gets health care without bills, education without debt, a pension, and care. The state takes a lot, but it also gives a lot. It's a fair deal. And you might say, well, there it is, but let's, as always, dig a little deeper. The first pillar would collapse instantly without the second, which is called trust. A Dane believes that his money will come back to him in the form of quality services, and here's the key point. The neighbor also pays, also contributes, and doesn't just live off the system. In the US, when the Pilgrims arrived from roughly the same places and decided to organize a collective farm, in the literal sense of the word, a communist enterprise, 3/4 of them stopped working right away. Well, that's another story, and so to speak, I'm amazed that the Danes work. Good for the Danes. But maybe it's because they're all in plain sight of each other. They're a small country. They all, I don't know. I think what holds it together is trust, the third pillar, homogeneity. 6 million people with a shared history, a common language, work habits, by the way, right? When you give half into the common pot, it's vital for you to believe that people take from it fairly, and your neighbor should be just like you. Not a stranger, not someone you don't understand, someone who's lived there all their life and so on, right? And here's the paradox, which is the whole reason I told you all this. The Danish model is called socialism, but It is based on the fact that what socialism denies, personal responsibility and each person's work ethic. It's not a system that allows you not to work. It's a system that only works because almost everyone in it works and considers it their duty. You hear me, right? Well, that's it, I know, right? Almost everyone in it works and considers it their duty, their sacred obligation. Now take away this culture, this culture, right? Which, by the way, many newcomers who come here also possess. Well, except for those communist cases. If you remove this culture, what remains is robbery. Some in favor of others. That is, either you have this kind of culture, and you all work, you all invest, you all take money and invest it in medicine, in something, like a common fund, again, right? Or it's robbery. In other words, Scandinavian generosity is based on exactly the same foundation as American inventiveness, resourcefulness, on a free person who chose to work and kept his word. Freedom creates wealth, and a culture of work and trust keeps it in the common pot, not letting it dissipate. But unfortunately, even Denmark, even its very own, was created by Dima Torzok. There, how should I put it, the culture, the whale is starting to crack. What in Denmark itself? Subtitles. 20 years ago, it wasn't customary to talk about it, but now even the left are talking about it. Why do I say even? Because, well, they're such liars, just the left. But if even they started talking, then it means something is happening. Everyone in Denmark says the system has started to break down. Not because the money ran out or the Danes forgot how to work, but because a lot of people with a different attitude toward the deal itself have entered it. The model is designed for a society where working is the norm. It's a duty, it's a source of dignity. When I arrived in Israel in 73, at the beginning of 74, not going to the army, there was like, you're not going to the army. Did something happen to you? Are you that sick? Because going to the army was, after all, a duty. It was the norm. It was a source of dignity. They didn't ask you whether you served or not later on, right? They would ask, which unit were you in? Where? Which division did you serve in? You'd say, do you know Vodka? Well, not Vodka, but Itzek, it doesn't matter. Work is the same way for them. Work with work, not with difficulty, but with work. But when a significant number of those arrive, thanks to the generous system, who aren't interested in the result of work, but in what they came there for, to take part in distributing what others have earned, yes, then the balance is disrupted. A category appears that is set on taking from the pot without adding to it, that is, without filling it. And it's not about nationality or religion, although in some sense it is too. It's about the mindset. Those who come to integrate and contribute strengthen the system no matter who they are. Those who come for benefits as their goal undermine it no matter who they are. When the number of recipients grows faster than the base of contributors, the arithmetic becomes ruthless. The pot empties faster. The pot empties faster than it fills. It's not just the arithmetic that collapses, trust collapses too, the second pillar. When a native Dane sees that some are taking without giving, he starts to ask a question he never asked before. Why should I give up half? This is exactly what destroyed those pilgrim settlements in New England, when the Pilgrims came here after the Mayflower. Solidarity was based on the idea that we're all in the same boat. As soon as the feeling appeared that I'm rowing while someone else is just relaxing, the willingness to give started to fade. Wouldn't yours start to fade too? That's exactly why tolerant Denmark was one of the first in Europe to sharply tighten immigration. But by then it had already let in too many. And it wasn't some right-wing minority, but the left-wing government. Because the leftists in Denmark understood something simple. To save the generous system, you have to strictly control who gets access to it. Just like the Swiss do. It's just that the Swiss have been doing this for a long time, while the Danes only started recently. Now, let's try to apply all this to America. The main question is, what would happen if America decided to copy the Danish model? There's an illusion here that America is simply rich and can easily afford everything. Let's break it down step by step, and you'll see why it wouldn't turn into a Scandinavian paradise, but rather its mirror opposite, which is called communist nonsense. Taxes. Copying Denmark doesn't mean just taxing Bezos and Musk. It means raising taxes for the average American to the level where about half is taken away. Well, like in Denmark, right? Plus a quarter on every purchase from what's left. So yeah, a quarter of what's left is 12.5% of the money you earned. But the whole American deal was built on the opposite principle. To take risks, to lose, but to keep your freedom. That's how it was designed. Taking half from the middle class in the US isn't reform, it's a political explosion. Now about scale and uniformity. Denmark works because 6 million similar people trust each other. America is 340 million incredibly diverse people. There is nothing in common between a resident of Vermont and a resident of Mississippi. Neither experience nor automatic solidarity. A person is willing to give half to someone they consider their own, and extremely reluctant to give it to a stranger who, in their opinion, isn't trying hard enough. At best, and at worst, does absolutely nothing at all. The trust that the Danish system is built on simply doesn't exist on an American scale. In other words, you can't introduce this by law. Efficiency. The small Danish state spends every krone relatively carefully. The giant federal machine loses on the way from our taxpayer to the service. Well, incomparably more. A dollar passes through so many hands that only pennies reach the goal, if that. Now remember the locked Swiss door. Denmark and Switzerland can afford to be generous only because they strictly guard the entrance. The US, with its scale and easily permeable borders, has changed a bit now. Things have changed a bit now. But before that, it was millions, so to speak. Several million every year. If you added Danish generosity, you would create the largest magnet in history for those who come for benefits as their goal. Well, I mean, you can get through. You pay $5,000, $6,000, $8,000, $9,000 to the cartel. They get you into the US, and there, everything has fallen apart. And you get a lot of money for the rest of your life. Well, that's amazing. The same dynamic that's undermining Denmark would unfold here tenfold. It already has. And this isn't just a theory. Yes, we have a live experiment right before our eyes inside the United States itself. Compare the states with high taxes, California, New York, Illinois, with the states with low taxes like Texas, Florida, Tennessee. People in capital have been flowing from the former to the latter for years. And Seattle raised taxes expecting to collect more. But what did they get? Yes, people fled, companies fled. Well, there's something called the Laffer curve. That's it. It explains everything. If, even within one country with a common language and culture, high taxes push people out, then a nationwide Danish model would only make this effect even stronger. Only there would be nowhere left to run, except abroad, out of the country, and as fast as possible. Put it all together, taxes on the middle class are rising sharply. The most productive and mobile people reduce their activity or leave. The taxpayer base shrinks. Generosity attracts recipients. They keep coming and coming and coming and coming. Expenses rise, revenues fall. Is this foreseeable? I think so. Deficit, debt. And in the end, cuts to all promised services, or the printing press, inflation. Then comes terrible dissatisfaction. I'm not getting as much as I was promised. Then there are attempts at, so to speak, riots, uprisings, revolutions, and so on. And then, a lag. In my view, there's no other possible result. The only problem is money, but people will get past it, like when they stormed the Bastille in France. And so they established universal brotherhood and what else? Equality. A republic where they killed everyone who got in their way. That is, things got 10 times worse, not just twice as bad. So in the end, it won't be Danish prosperity, but the opposite. Outflow, deficit, division. What does this mean? 3 countries. 3 different secrets. Norway is rich thanks to oil. That's luck. Well, you can't repeat that. Switzerland is rich thanks to the door they locked and the trust inside their closed club. That only works behind a high wall. Only when you know that, as they say, no passerone, no one will get through. Denmark is rich thanks to a work culture and the solidarity of a homogeneous society, and that's the most fragile of the 3. Because it's not held together by resources or by a wall, but by people and their attitudes. Attitudes change. Additional people come in, and it all goes down the drain. And after that, you can finish the word tarry yourself. And none of these 3 recipes can simply be taken and copied, transferred to America. For example, you can't copy Norwegian oil. Either you have it in such quantities relative to the population or you don't. You can't copy the Swiss wall. America is built on openness. You can't copy Danish culture of trust because you can't introduce culture by law. That's the root of the mistake of everyone who shouts, "Let's do it like in Scandinavia." They see the result, comfort, security, peace of mind, and they think they can achieve it by copying the mechanism. But they copy the fruits without transplanting the roots. You can copy the tax rate. You can't copy a society that's willing to pay it. You can introduce benefits. You can't create a culture by law where taking without giving is considered shameful. You can build a generous system. You can't create trust by decree between 30 and 340 million strangers. Well, it's very difficult. And all of this is two sides of the same truth. Freedom creates wealth. It allows a person to try, to take risks, to make mistakes, to keep the fruits for themselves. And culture, hard work, responsibility, and trust determine whether this wealth will be preserved or will dissipate. Rules that protect against violence safeguard both engines. Rules that tie your hands in advance stifle them. The first one. And taking away without a culture of hard work destroys the second one. America is rich not in spite of freedom, but because of it. Denmark is rich not in spite of its work culture, but because of its work culture. And neither of these foundations can be obtained by someone else's decree. And you know what's most encouraging about this? Since it's not about geniuses, not about nations, not about the number of people, but about freedom and the culture that this freedom requires. So it means that everything, after all, is in our hands. So after all, everything is in our hands. As the Lord God said, Telokem ve Ezerecha, which means, Boris, and then I will help you. So Boris, and then I will help you. Freedom cannot be extracted from underground like oil, and it cannot be inherited like capital. But it can be chosen. It can be built. Freedom is a product. It doesn't grow on trees. It doesn't lie under the same tree or under a fir tree or anywhere else. Society, good society, cannot be imposed from above by decree. It can only be grown from the bottom up, from a culture of work, from personal responsibility, from the trust that people build with each other themselves. Rich and free countries were not born that way, they became that way. Because at some point a turning point occurred. The choice, maybe not even a conscious one, but rather something that happened historically, which means this choice is available to every society and to each of us. Denmark is not rich because it passed the right laws, but because its people spent centuries building a culture that made those laws possible. No state will do this work for us, but that's exactly why we can do it ourselves. We can do it. The key to prosperity isn't hidden somewhere far away across the sea. It's in our hands. We just need to decide to take it and turn it. If this analysis clarified anything for you, ladies and gentlemen, it was a difficult topic, I know. Share it with those who still believe in simple solutions and that more rules mean more order, more prosperity. Subscribe to the Roadmap to Freedom. Download my book for free using the link below the video. You will start receiving short 10-minute videos every day, well, with your coffee. And for those who don't drink coffee, with your tea. If you don't drink tea either, then with a glass of water. You can also walk on the treadmill and watch. Think freely. See you next time.